throws their whole science into doubt. I mean, this is without Christian Science. There are a lot of people who do it just on their own. Like Norman Thomas, founder of the Committee for a Sane Nuclear Policy. He had tuberculosis as a child. And he discovered in the tuberculosis sanitarium that the optimists were getting out every day. More of them were being released, and the pessimists were still lying there and suffering. So he consciously made himself an optimist, got rid of the TB, and got released. And about, I don't know how many, 40 years later, when he was middle-aged and a very successful editor, publisher, political activist, and so on, he got a very rare African disease, which is considered 100% fatal. Everybody who's ever gotten it, except him, except Norman Cousins, has died. When they told him that in the hospital, he got the hell out of the hospital, the first move towards cure, checked into a hotel, and rented videos of the Three Stooges and the Marx Brothers, and had a doctor who was as much of a heretic as himself come in every day and give him a massive shot of vitamin C. And he recovered, and he didn't die. He's the only one ever recorded to have that disease without dying of it. Now, there are some conservatives in the medical profession who say he never had the disease in the first place. That's the favorite way of evading the data. But the plain fact of the matter is that his experience and the way he wrote about it and the evidence he collected from other cases was so impressive that at the end of his life he was teaching at UCLA Medical School, even though he wasn't a doctor. He was teaching doctors how to activate this self-healing process in their patients by encouraging them to be optimists instead of pessimists. He also referred to it as activating the fighting spirit. And it happens all the time, but doctors don't like to think about it because it seems too spooky. And that's only one aspect of metaprogramming. As I said, you can program yourself into a Nazi reality tunnel if you really want to go crazy, but you can program yourself into a Buddhist reality tunnel, a nudist reality tunnel. You can program yourself into a vegetarian reality tunnel. I did for 1 year. I got to the point where I couldn't pass the butcher part of the supermarket without feeling disgusted. It seemed so horrible, all that meat hanging there. Then I got tired being a vegetarian, and now seeing meat in a butcher shop doesn't shock me or revolt me at all anymore.
So who is the person that is doing all this metaprogramming? What part of you stays outside?
Who is the metaprogrammer? That is the question, to which there are different answers. According to Colin Wilson, it's the transcendental ego as contrasted with the ordinary ego. But the higher you get in the circuits, the harder it is to talk about them in subject-predicate sentences with the is of identity in the middle of them. They can be better described in art and music, but I do the best I can.
So in the seventh circuit, which relates us to the sun, is that correct? Or Sunday, we have the ability to do constant conscious re-imprinting of all the other circuits.
I suppose so, at the ultimate. I don't know how many people have achieved it to the extent of what seems theoretically possible. But I have seen people achieve really astonishing things, like Timothy Leary when he was dying of cancer. He was still the funniest guy I ever knew. And I think anybody who thinks we're trapped by circumstance, all they need is to talk to people who visited Leary in his last year while he was wasting away and dying a little bit more every day and having pretty continuous pain. Well, of course, he used all the drugs he could find, legal or illegal, to handle the pain, but that's because he was a rebel all his life. But it wasn't just the drugs, it was the long experience he had at re-imprinting and metaprogramming.
So he knew how to metaprogram himself into a state where
where pain and death were just experiences that he could stand above and look down at and laugh about. He especially laughed at the people who felt sorry for him, or the people who thought he was suffering abominably. He was suffering abominably, but he refused to let that interfere with his mind's activity. He had hilaritas to an extreme extent.
Bob, in what sense does the Seventh Circuit relate to the seventh day or Sunday?
Well, that's the circuit where metaprogramming allows you to escape from so many ordinary reality tunnels that the chief symbol for it is the white light of the void in Buddhism, or the empty circle in Zen Buddhism, or the pyramid in the Western occult tradition with the eye on top. Senzaki Roshi used to talk about big mind and little mind. All the previous circuits are little mind. The seventh circuit is big mind. It's you, and yet it's much more than you. And that's why so many people call it the direct communication with God, or becoming one with God, or becoming one with the universe. But you can become one with an ant. You can become one with a crow, as in the Don Juan books.
And so how is this related to the sun?
Well, the sun is the standard symbol of light, liberty, liberation, illumination, God consciousness, God intoxication, self-intoxication to some extent. And the Sufis feel that if you get too far into that without balancing it, you become what they call a mere ecstatic, which in California slang has become a bliss ninny. And we've got quite a few bliss ninnies wandering around these days. It depends on how much you keep your perspective and how much you just enjoy feeling like God.
So there is no eighth day of the week, obviously.
Yeah, and in the Hindu system, the eighth chakra is not in the body, but above the body. Yeah, I call that the non-local quantum circuit. Leary kept changing his name for it. I forget why. I think his last book he called it the non-local atomic circuit or something like that. He was getting closer to my label. We were influencing each other for several years there. I call it the non-local quantum circuit because one of the most fascinating things in quantum mechanics is Bell's theorem, which has been confirmed 5 times now. It's not only mathematically sound, but experimentally it's been verified. And what Bell's theorem says basically is that everything in the universe is in harmony with everything else in the universe. Well, more specifically, it says any 2 particles once in contact continue to remain correlated in mathematically precise ways, no matter how far apart from each other they move, even if they're so far apart that information from one can't get to the other in the time you're taking your measurements. So how does information get around faster than light if the things are that far apart? Well, nobody knows, but David Bohm, for instance, gave 3 lines of interpretation. One is that we're going to have to radically redefine our ideas of both space and time, even more radically than Einstein did. The second is that information somehow travels faster than light, even though energy can't. How can information travel without energy? Well, that's the mystery to be solved, but information is somehow getting around. And the third approach is that it's not traveling around, it's always there. The hardware is local. And this is where I like to quote Jack Sarfati, a physicist who I don't get along with very well, but he does have some great metaphors. And his metaphor for this